The morning light filtered through the blinds of the courtroom in the bustling city of Newbridge, Massachusetts, casting stripes across the somber room. The air was thick with anticipation as Martha Ellison, a woman of dignified bearing, sat at the defense table. Despite the gravity of the situation, a calm resolve radiated from her. She wore a simple navy blue dress, her dark hair pulled back in a neat bun. Across the room sat Officer David Harding, his expression smug and confident in his crisp police uniform. He leaned back in his chair, occasionally exchanging glances with the other officers present. His demeanor suggested a man secure in his position. The case: the Commonwealth versus Martha Ellison. Officer Harding had accused Martha of resisting arrest and assaulting him during a routine traffic stop. But the details were muddy. Eleanor Vance, Martha's lawyer, a sharp, experienced woman with a reputation for defending the underdog, adjusted her glasses nervously. She shot a reassuring look at Martha, who offered a subtle nod in return. "All rise," the bailiff announced, and Judge Thomas Reynolds, a stern-faced man known for his strict adherence to the law, entered the courtroom. "Commonwealth versus Ellison," Judge Reynolds announced. "The court is now in session." Avery, the district attorney, a middle-aged man with a well-practiced courtroom presence, began. "The Commonwealth calls Officer David Harding to the stand." Harding walked to the stand, took the oath, and sat down, his gaze fixed on Avery. "Officer Harding," Avery began, "please describe the events that occurred on the evening of July 14th. Harding began his story. "I was on patrol on Elm Street when I observed the defendant, Ms. Ellison, speeding and weaving erratically. I initiated a traffic stop, but she refused to pull over immediately. When she finally did, she was argumentative and refused to provide her license and registration." "Did she show any signs of intoxication?" Avery asked. "I smelled alcohol on her breath, but she refused a field sobriety test. When I attempted to place her under arrest for suspicion of driving under the influence, she became violent, resisting my efforts and striking me in the chest." "Did you sustain any injuries?" "Yes, a bruised sternum and a sprained wrist." Harding held up his wrist, which was indeed bandaged. Avery paused for effect. "Officer Harding, did Ms. Ellison at any point express any remorse for her actions?" "No, sir. She remained defiant and belligerent throughout the entire encounter." "Thank you, Officer Harding. Your witness," Avery said, turning to Eleanor Vance. Eleanor rose, her expression calm but focused. "Officer Harding, you stated that Ms. Ellison was speeding and weaving erratically. Did you have video evidence to support this claim?" "My dashcam was malfunctioning that evening," Harding replied evenly. "And you smelled alcohol on her breath?" Eleanor continued. "Yes. Did you administer a breathalyzer test?" "She refused. But you have the right to compel a breathalyzer test, do you not?" "Yes, but given her combative behavior, I deemed it necessary to secure the scene first." Eleanor paused, letting the answer sink in. "Officer Harding, you also stated that Ms. Ellison struck you in the chest. Did you have any witnesses to this alleged assault?" "No, it was just the two of us." "So, no video evidence, no breathalyzer test, no witnesses, just your word against hers," Eleanor said pointedly. "That's correct," Harding replied, his jaw tightening. "Officer Harding, are you familiar with the concept of racial profiling?" Eleanor asked, her voice sharp. Avery objected, but Judge Reynolds overruled him. "The witness will answer the question." Harding hesitated. "I am. Ma'am, have you ever been accused of racial profiling in the past?" "No," Harding said firmly. "Are you sure about that, officer?" Eleanor asked, her eyes boring into his. "Objection. Hearsay," Avery shouted. "Sustained," Judge Reynolds said. "Ms. Vance, move along. I have no further questions for this witness." "Your Honor," Eleanor said, a hint of a smile playing on her lips. She knew she had planted a seed of doubt in the jurors' minds. Martha took the stand in her own defense, offering a starkly different account of that evening. She admitted to exceeding the speed limit slightly due to a sudden family emergency, but denied driving erratically or being intoxicated. She testified that Harding had been aggressive and accusatory from the start, and that when she questioned his authority, he became physically forceful. "He grabbed my arm roughly," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I told him I hadn't done anything wrong, but he wouldn't listen. He just kept yelling at me. I was scared." Did you strike Officer Harding at any point? Eleanor asked. No, never, Martha replied firmly. I did try to pull my arm away when he grabbed me, but I never struck him. Under cross-examination, Avery tried to discredit Martha, but she remained calm and composed, sticking to her version of events. The trial dragged on, the courtroom filled with tension and uncertainty. But Eleanor had a plan. She knew that the key to Martha's defense lay in revealing a truth that Harding had completely overlooked. On the final day of the trial, Eleanor made a dramatic move. Your Honor, she said, the defense calls Martha Ellison to the stand once more. Martha returned to the stand, her demeanor radiating a quiet power. Ms. Ellison, Eleanor began, you've heard the testimony and accusations against you. Is there anything else you would like to tell the court? Something that perhaps Officer Harding overlooked? Martha paused, taking a deep breath. Yes, there is, she said, her voice clear and resonant. My name is Martha Ellison, and I'm a retired captain in the United States Coast Guard. I served for 25 years, including several tours of duty overseas. A collective gasp went through the courtroom. Harding's face went pale. Eleanor continued, Captain Ellison, as a Coast Guard officer, what were your duties and responsibilities? I was responsible for the safety and security of our nation's waterways. Martha replied, I oversaw search and rescue operations, law enforcement activities, and homeland security missions. Did you receive any special training during your service? Yes, I underwent extensive training in law enforcement, self-defense, and crisis management. Eleanor then showed the court Martha's distinguished and unblemished service record. Decorations and achievements lined the file. Officer Harding, Eleanor said, turning to Harding, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Did you have any idea who Ms. Ellison was when you pulled her over that night? Harding squirmed in his seat, his face now flushed with anger and embarrassment. No, he mumbled. Did you bother to ask? Did you even take the time to treat her with the respect she deserved? Objection, Avery shouted. Argumentative. Sustained, Judge Reynolds said, but the damage had been done. Eleanor turned back to the jury. Ladies and gentlemen, Officer Harding saw only a woman. He didn't see a veteran, a captain in the United States Coast Guard. He saw someone he thought he could push around, someone he thought wouldn't fight back. But he was wrong. He grossly underestimated her. Eleanor finished her closing argument with force and grace. The jury deliberated for hours. The suspense in the courthouse grew with each passing minute. Finally, the jury reached a verdict. In the case of the Commonwealth versus Martha Ellison, the foreperson announced, we find the defendant not guilty on all charges. A cheer erupted in the courtroom. Martha smiled, relief washing over her face. Eleanor embraced her, tears welling up in her eyes. Harding hung his head in shame. In the months that followed, Officer Harding was investigated by the Newbridge Police Department. He was eventually suspended without pay and subjected to an internal affairs investigation. The dashcam in the car was found to be broken and never reported by Harding. He retired under duress. Martha returned to her quiet life in Newbridge, but she became a local hero. Her story served as a reminder that justice can prevail, even when the odds are stacked against you. That bravery comes in all forms, and that sometimes, the most dangerous enemies are the ones who underestimate you.